Yes, now let's talk about Ukraine. US President Joe Biden says he would consider personal sanctions on Vladimir Putin if Russia invades Ukraine. Boris Johnson has said the UK is willing to put boots on the ground to support any effort by NATO if Russia invades Ukraine.
Well, Keir Giles is a Russia expert at Chatham House and he's with us right now. Thank you very, very much. So what's Joe Biden threatening, essentially?
Exactly as you said. If Russia invades Ukraine, then it'll be sanctions which go beyond what have already been imposed on Russia to actually target President Putin personally. But the big question, of course, here is the if, and the if that's always attached to Russian actions. It's all talking about a land invasion of Ukraine. Unfortunately, that leaves Russia a whole load of other options open for what it might do that would cause damage and disruption and destruction in the West, but don't actually trigger those responses. And we know that Russia wants to force the pace. President Putin has promised what he calls military technical responses if he doesn't get what he wants in terms of rolling back the clock and rolling back the frontiers of Europe and giving Russia a free hand there again. So tying everything to this mirage of a land invasion that's been held up as the most likely scenario really boxes the West into a corner.
Yeah, what could they actually do to hurt Putin personally? What is it that Joe Biden could actually do then?
Well, one of the things that we've been interested in is the way in which anti-money laundering legislation abroad in countries like the UK could be applied with a little bit more diligence and a little bit more energy. Because after all, where Russia's oligarchy with Putin at the top of the tree sorts its money away is in the West and primarily in London. And if we actually follow through on some of the promises that have been made to target that and look more closely at where that money is kept and where it came from, then that is a direct threat to the fortunes and the power of those who are in charge in Russia at the moment.
And what do you, in your view, what is the likely outcome of all of this? Because we are hearing this language, aren't we? Invasion. I think President Biden yesterday was talking about the largest invasion since World War II. It is quite big language they're using there. I mean, should we be toning down this language, or actually is this threat as significant as some of this strong language is suggesting?
Well, there's no doubt there's a significant threat. Now, whether or not Russia actually intends to invade Ukraine, there seems to be no doubt that they're actually prepared and ready and have built up the capabilities to do so. And that means that, yes, you need to take it seriously. And you need to take steps like, for example, what the UK and US have done, withdraw non-essential personnel from the embassy in Kiev. Because even if it's not a land invasion, let's look at how Russia gets its way in military conflicts, as we've seen in, for example, Syria. They think that terrorizing the civilian population by bombarding them with air and missile strikes is a good way to win a war. So that is the kind of threat that Ukraine is actually now facing. And it's a real one because Russia does have both the capability and they've shown the will to do it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the only thing that they can do, because this isn't about Ukraine. It's about Russia's relationship with the West as a whole. It's about rolling back the frontiers of NATO as a whole. So if Russia can find ever pressure points where it can deliver pain to the West to make it to bring the West back to talking about what it is that Russia wants, then we shouldn't rule that out.
Yeah. How do you think Vladimir Putin will feel at the moment when he looks across the pond at Joe Biden and sees someone who seems to forget where he is quite a lot of the time, and then he looks at Boris Johnson, who might frankly be on the way out? Is this emboldening Putin?
I don't think he cares particularly much about what Boris Johnson thinks, because, after all, that's not very relevant to Russia's risk calculus.
Is it not more beneficial for Putin potentially, you know, if we're very unstable at the moment as a nation, some people who might put up some resistance against him are unstable, aren't they? That must be a benefit to him, you would have thought.
That's absolutely right. And one of the striking things that we've seen from the UK after Brexit is the way it has carved out this firm and resolute policy that's independent from Europe in actually facing down Russia in a much more direct way than we see from European partners. But at the same time, you hear Boris Johnson again pinning everything on the threat of a land invasion and telling Russia that if they do that, they'll probably face another Chechnya, which forgets that for Russia, Chechnya was actually a victory. They won that war. So why would you threaten them with something that actually turned out in the long run to be a success? But yes, Russia's already succeeded. By getting these demands for taking away the security of our friends and our partners and our allies in Eastern Europe on the table for discussion with Russia, they've already made an important first step in actually rolling back the clock in the way they want to.
Well, Keir Giles, really insightful. Thank you for joining us this morning. Russia expert there from think tank Chatham House.